Hi, I'm Duncan Moss, and I'd like to welcome you to my latest video blog. A few weeks ago, I did a feature on one of my favourite actors, Boris Karloff, and now I'd like to do one on another one of my favourite actors. That's Boris's contemporary, Bela Lugosi. Bela was born on the 20th of October, 1882, in Hungary, in the town of Lugos. And he was very interested in acting from a very early age. I don't think his family were that happy about it, but by the time he was 20, he was on the stage. And I think that's where he took his stage name from his local town and varied it slightly to make Lugosi. And he was in loads of plays. Apparently, he played Jesus in a passion play. And of course, the First World War came along, and that interrupted his career. He went into the Hungarian army and was wounded in action and was invalided out. And he made his first film in 1917, and by 1919 he had to escape from his country because it was being taken over by the communists. And he and a friend escaped in a biplane under fire by the communists. He'd end up in Germany and making some films, one of them for the legendary director F.W. Murnau, called The Head of Janus, which was an unofficial Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movie. And F.W. Murnau, of course, was going to get quite a reputation for making unofficial versions of famous stories. And Bela then went to France. I think we made one film. And then he made his way over on a ship where I think he serves as a steward, um, where he got to New York and immersed himself in the Hungarian theatre that was there. He worked tirelessly to help underprivileged Hungarian immigrants who were much poorer than he was, although he himself wasn't exactly rich. And in 1927, he got the part of Count Dracula in a Broadway production, which ran for 2.5 years. I don't think that was all on Broadway, because some of that was in Los Angeles, but it was all with Bela. And Bela decided to settle in Los Angeles, obviously feeling that films were the best way forward in his career. Around 1929, Universal Studios were anxious to make a film version of Dracula, and they were hoping to use the legendary actor Lon Chaney, who was known as the Man of a Thousand Faces, one of the greatest character actors the silent screen has ever seen. But very sadly, Lon Chaney died in early 1930 after making just one sound movie. And Universal, in a bit of a panic, started to test every actor they could get their hands on for the part of Dracula. But they overlooked Bela, which caused Bela to be very bitter for a number of years. Eventually, they had the idea of casting Bela in the film because he was fairly unknown on the cinema screen. He'd appeared in a small part in an early talkie called The 13th Chair, and he made a few films during the silent era, but he was fairly unknown, and therefore he was going to be very cheap. They paid him $500 flat for his role. Bela made the picture, and his performance in the movie is just mesmerizing. Whilst Todd Browning's directing is a little bit slow, Bela takes advantage of that with his most hypnotic performance. and he really is absolutely terrific. And helping him out were two other fine performances: Edward Van Sloan as Professor Van Helsing, and Dwight Fry as Renfield, who both were absolutely superb. And the film was a smash hit. It was released on Valentine's Day 1931, and Bela became, being the very, very handsome man that he became a sex symbol at the tender age of 49. And Universal were very, very keen to get him into another horror movie very, very quickly, and they chose Frankenstein. Now, Bela was going to be the monster or the creature in the film. He was far from happy with this because, being a classically trained actor, the monster had no dialogue and he didn't want to play what he said was a mute brute. But he played along with it for a while. He did a test reel. He didn't get on well with his makeup artist, Jack Pierce, either on Dracula or this test reel. And he got into a strop during the shooting and said, "I was a star in my own country. I will not be made a scarecrow over here." And the test reel did not go down well with Carl Laemmle, and the film, which was going to be directed by Robert Florey, who had written the script and done the test reel. He was dropped from the picture, or he left the picture, I'm not quite sure. Bela left the picture, and a few days later, it was taken up by a British director, James Whale, who had his own idea about who he wanted to be in the film. Bela had been penciled in to play Dr. Frankenstein instead of the creature, but James Whale wanted his friend Colin Clive to play the part, and he wanted Boris Karloff to play the part of the creature. So Boris became, along with Bela, they became the two big Hollywood bogeymen of the 30s and 40s. And Bela went on to make Murders in the Rue Morgue, which was a very handsomely mounted movie with Robert Florey directing. It wasn't a success. It's quite slow, but it's beautiful visually. The sets are beautiful. The costumes are lovely. Bela's great in it. It's just a little bit slow. And the film, people felt the film was a bit tame after Dracula and Frankenstein. So the picture closed quite quickly. And Bela also made Chandu the Magician in a feature film, and then The Return of Chandu, which was a Saturday morning serial. And he was also the Sayer of the Law in The Island of Lost Souls, based on The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. And Bela would appear with Boris Karloff in 3 movies, all 3 classics: The Black Cat, The Raven, and The Invisible Ray. They were very, very successful, and Bela and Boris worked really well together. There's a saying that it's widely believed by a lot of film historians that Bela and Boris did not get on well. But Bela Lugosi Jr., Bela's son, and Sarah Jane Karloff, Boris's daughter, both who are now really good friends, both concur that they never heard their fathers ever talk badly about the other person. And the horror genre would come to an end for a while because in Britain, horror movies were now banned. I don't know why. I really don't. Maybe something to do with British Reserve and the fact we're not very good at understanding anything that's slightly different. But Bela was delighted that the horror season had come to an end. You see, the British market made up for 40% of overseas sales. So Hollywood had taken the fact the horror ban seriously enough, basically, to stop making them. horror pictures. They still make creaky haunted house comedies and stuff, but the horror movie, the traditional horror movie, was for the moment on the back burner. Bela was delighted because he thought he could have he'd find a lot of exciting roles to play, but sadly, the roles just dried up after a play and a couple of days' work on a film series called SOS Coast Guard. There weren't any parts coming along, and for the next 18 months, things got very, very difficult. Bela lost his house, got behind with a mortgage. And when his wife Lillian was about to give birth to their son, a Hollywood charity had to come along to help them out. Bela would get a part in when the horror ban was lifted. Britain would come up with a special H certificate where you had to be 16 or over to go and see the films. And this new film that Universal were planning was in the Frankenstein franchise, Son of Frankenstein, which would star Basil Rathbone in the title role, and Lionel Atwill and Boris Karloff back as the monster. And Bela would play a character called Igor, a shepherd who is psychopathic, has murdered lots of people, and has been hanged, but escaped from the gallows with a broken neck, but with a neck that seems to have solidified. So he's got his neck is at an angle. When he first meets Basil Rathbone in the film, Basil Rathbone says to him, Igor, I cannot mend a broken neck. And Igor's reply is, no one can mend Igor's neck. It's all right. And then he thanks. Of course, Rathbone is playing Wolfram Frankenstein. And the picture was a fantastic success, and Bela shines in it very, very well. It's a 1 hour, 40-minute movie, which is way, way more longer than the average running time of a horror movie of that time. It was really like a horror epic, and Bela shines in it. He was only supposed to be on the film for a week and being paid $500. But Roland V. Lee, who was the director, felt that the part could be expanded massively, and he kept Bela on the shooting session for the whole 5 weeks. So Bela was paid a lot more money because he stayed in 5 weeks rather than one. In fact, Universal was so impressed with Bela's performance that they gave him a new contract, and he was allowed to play Igor again in a few years later in The Ghost of Frankenstein. This time he'd be acting with Lon Chaney Jr. rather than Karloff. Bela would carry on through into the mid-40s making movies. Unfortunately, he wouldn't play Dracula in House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula. That went to John Carradine. He played Dracula characters through his career. He'd been in Mark of the Vampire for MGM and Return of the Vampire for Columbia, but they were Dracula-type characters. They weren't officially called Dracula because of copyright reasons. He would only play the Count in one more movie, and that was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. He did get a wonderful part in The Body Snatchers with Henry Daniell and Boris Karloff playing Joseph. Robert Weiss, the director, was a big fan of Lugosi's and wrote a small part in for him for the film, which was made by RKO. And Bela was great in that. And when he made Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, he played his role straight, but he shone beautifully in the film. And as the other monsters were all played straight. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein was a massive money spinner, and but sadly, it didn't help Bela, who again found films after this film roles difficult to come by. In 1951, he and Lillian arrive in Britain for a tour of Dracula right round the British Isles. And they'll start they'll kick off the tour at the Theatre Royal in Brighton for 8 performances and then head round the country, playing in many seaside resorts. The tour must have been relatively successful because it went on for 270 performances. And just although it failed to make it to the West End, but during the tour of Dracula, Bela was announced to appear in British horror comedy Old Mother Riley Meets the Vampire with Arthur Lucan. I think it's known as Vampire Over London in the States. The film was very low budget. Arthur Lucan was a guy who played a character called Old Mother Riley, and his wife, Kitty McShane, played his daughter. And the film, it's fine. It's just like a monogram movie. Bella's clearly having fun. There's a robot in it, and 3 British actors appear in the movie for their first time on the screen: Hattie Jakes, Richard Wattis, and Dora Bryan, who the Beatles were a massive fan of. The film went out. I don't think it was shown in America until several years later, but it made some money in the British Isles and British territories. And then Bela and his wife went to a Christmas premiere of the film Scrooge with Alistair Sim in the title role, and then headed back to America. Very sadly, the next few years were not going to be good for Bela. His marriage would collapse. He became drastically addicted to methadone, I think it was, due to his war wounds, which had played him up quite a lot and was now getting more and more painful. And he made friends with a director called Edward D. Wood, and they made 3 films together: Glen or Glenda, Bride of the Monster, and Plan 9 from Outer Space. Sadly, with Bela dying before the film was finished, and they tried to use a stand-in, but it didn't really work. But his last film with dialogue was Bride of the Monster. He then made a movie with his friends Lon Chaney and Basil Rathbone, but he had to play a mute part, and I can't remember for the life of me what the film was called. But Bela, he had to go to hospital and go into a clinic to be to try and do something about his addiction to methadone. And a young fan called Hope wrote to him regularly and became a firm friend of his. And then one of the most moving things that ever happened in Hollywood, they fell in love and they got married. And Bela Lugosi Jr. was the best man. And then they only had a year together. Then Bela died of a heart attack. I'm sorry. And he was buried in his Dracula cape. And I think he is every bit as great as Boris. I know he didn't quite have the same success as Boris, but he was a very fine actor. And like so many actors of that kind, mediocre script could be brought up much, much higher by his talent. And Bela and Boris are 2 of my favourite actors, and I really, really do love them very much. And if you haven't seen either Boris Karloff or Bela Lugosi in any films, do give them a try because they're very, very good. And thank you very much for your time. As I say, I don't want to give the whole story because the whole idea of these blogs is to whet people's appetites. And if you like this, please subscribe if you haven't already done so. Click the like button. Forward to a friend. It'd be lovely for this channel to grow a bit and for me to make a few new friends on the way. Take care, everybody. Love you. Bye bye.